The summons. The crystalline chamber of the eternal quorum stretched 3 kilometers in every direction, its walls pulsing with the collective consciousness of 16,000 species. At its center, Ambassador Cale Vinson stood alone, her magnetic boots the only thing keeping her grounded in the zero-gravity expanse. Human, the voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, spoken in perfect Earth standard through neural translation. You stand before the oldest civilization collective in this spiral arm. We have governed the galactic community for 47 million of your years. Cale adjusted her collar, refusing to show the tremor in her hands. Behind her visor, brown eyes surveyed the assembled consciousness nodes, beings of pure energy, crystallized thought, and species that existed in dimensions her mind couldn't fully process. She was 29 years old, the youngest ambassador Earth had ever sent, chosen precisely because the diplomatic corps assumed she'd be too inexperienced to cause trouble. They were wrong. The quorum acknowledges your species' existence, continued the voice, which Cale had learned belonged to something called the primary adjudicator. In accordance with Statute 447 Omega, all pre-industrial species discovered by member civilizations must undergo the proving. Cale's jaw tightened. The proving? 3 months ago, the Quorum scouts had detected Earth's radio signatures. 2 months ago they'd arrived in orbit, demonstrating technology so advanced it made humanity's best efforts look like stone tools. 1 month ago they delivered their ultimatum: submit to the proving or be sterilized for the safety of the galactic community. We understand the terms, Cale replied, keeping her voice steady. Humanity accepts your challenge. A ripple passed through the chamber, something that might have been surprise or perhaps amusement. You misunderstand, human. This is not a challenge. This is a judgment. The primary adjudicator materialized before her, a being composed of folded spacetime, its form constantly shifting between states of matter. 43 species have undergone the proving since your sun ignited. 43 species have failed. They now serve the quorum in reduced capacities. Cale thought of the servant races she'd seen on her journey here. The Vren, whose four-armed forms had once built stellar megastructures, now barely capable of speech, their cognitive functions limited to menial tasks. The Thos collective, whose mathematical prowess had once been legendary, reduced to living calculators, their independence stripped away. The proving consists of 5 trials, the adjudicator explained, each designed to test the fundamental qualities required for civilized participation in galactic affairs. Compliance, deference, efficiency, predictability, and most importantly, appropriate fear. Fear. Cale echoed. Fear is the foundation of cosmic order, another voice chimed in, Overseer Thexnor, a being resembling a massive eye suspended in amber fluid. Species that do not fear consequences cannot be governed. Those who do not fear the superior cannot learn their place. Your species files indicate a dangerous tendency toward defiance, even when outmatched. This must be corrected. Cale felt a cold fury building in her chest. Everything about this civilization, this quorum, reeked of tyranny wrapped in bureaucratic procedure. They'd perfected the art of conquest through ritualized humiliation. The first trial begins in 1 standard rotation, the adjudicator announced. You will be presented with an impossible task. Your species' appropriate response is to acknowledge your limitations and request mercy. This demonstrates the humility necessary for junior membership. And if we complete the task? Cale asked. The silence that followed was absolute. No species has completed the first trial in 6 million years, Thexnor said slowly. The task is mathematically impossible according to all known physics. It is designed to teach acceptance of your place in the cosmic hierarchy. Cale smiled then, a sharp, dangerous expression that didn't reach her eyes. You clearly haven't studied human history very carefully. We have a saying, impossible is just a challenge we haven't solved yet. Another ripple, stronger this time. Several consciousness nodes flared with what her neural translator interpreted as irritation. Your arrogance will be corrected, the adjudicator said coldly. Return to your vessel. Prepare your delegation. Tomorrow you will learn what all emerging species must learn. The universe is vast, ancient, and utterly indifferent to your pride. As the gravity beneath her feet pulled her toward the exit portal, Cale activated her private comm channel. Captain Reeves, did you get all that? Every word, came the gruff reply from the UNS Defiant, humanity's first and only faster-than-light capable ship, currently in standby orbit. Sounds like they're trying to break us before we even begin. They don't understand us yet, Cale said quietly, passing through corridors lined with achievement monuments from thousands of subject species. They've spent millions of years conquering through intimidation. They've forgotten that some species bite harder when cornered. What's the plan, Ambassador? Kale thought of Earth 40 light-years away. She thought of the 8 billion people who'd never asked to be judged by alien bureaucrats. She thought of every human who'd ever looked at an impossible problem and decided to solve it anyway. We're going to do what humans do best, Captain. We're going to take their impossible test, their carefully designed humiliation ritual, and we're going to shove it down their throats. Then we're going to smile and ask for the next one. That's insubordinate, dangerous, and probably going to get us all killed, Reeves replied. Probably, Kale agreed. But we're going to look spectacular doing it. The impossible equation. The trial chamber was different from the quorum's main hall. Smaller, more intimate, designed for an audience. Kale counted representatives from at least 50 species in the observation galleries, all gathered to watch humanity's predicted failure. Beside her stood Dr. Zara Okonkwo, Earth's leading quantum physicist, whose dark eyes sparkled with barely contained excitement rather than fear. At 34, Zara had solved 3 previously unsolvable mathematical proofs and had a habit of laughing at problems that made other scientists weep. The third member of their team was Commander Jax Ortega, a military strategist whose calm demeanor hid a mind that processed tactical scenarios faster than most computers. His silver-streaked hair was the only sign of the 20 years he'd spent in Earth's combined forces. Humans of Earth, the adjudicator's voice resonated through the chamber. Your first trial, the collapse equation. A holographic display materialized, a mathematical formula so complex it hurt to look at. Variables cascaded through 11-dimensional space, incorporating physics that humanity hadn't even theorized yet. This equation, Thexnor explained with barely disguised satisfaction, describes the precise energy threshold required to collapse a spatial fold without creating a cascade singularity. It is the fundamental barrier preventing advanced dimensional manipulation. Solve it and you demonstrate capacity for higher thought. Fail and you prove your species requires remedial instruction. Zara stepped forward, her fingers already moving through the holographic interface. What's the time limit? 1 rotation. Approximately 23.4 of your hours. Pause. No species has ever required more than 3 hours to admit defeat. Coffee, Kale said into her calm, all of it. Captain Reeves' voice crackled back. Already brewing. An ambassador? We've been running our own analysis. This isn't just impossible, it's deliberately paradoxical. The variables contradict themselves in at least 9 places. Kale kept her expression neutral, but inside, her suspicions crystallized. The quorum wasn't testing problem-solving ability. They were testing obedience, the willingness to surrender when authority declared something beyond reach. Dr. Okonkwo? She asked quietly. Zara's grin was almost feral. Oh, they're clever. But they made 2 mistakes. First, they assumed their physics is complete. Second, they assumed we'd play by their rules. For the next 6 hours, Kale watched Zara work. The physicist's fingers flew through equations, occasionally muttering things like Euclidean assumptions. How quaint, and they've never considered non-causal operators, have they? Commander Ortega, meanwhile, had been quietly observing the audience. Ambassador, he murmured, notice how they're watching us? They're not interested in whether we solve this. They're measuring how long before we break. Kale nodded. In the galleries, alien species whispered among themselves. She caught fragments through her translator. Typical Defiance phase, usually lasts 4 hours, then comes acceptance, then the begging. At hour 12, Thexnor manifested in the chamber. Human scientist, you have made no progress. This is your opportunity to demonstrate wisdom. Admit the task exceeds your capacity. Request guidance. This is the correct response. Zara didn't even look up. Define progress in this context. Because I've eliminated 4,000 invalid solution paths, which I'd call excellent progress. Obstinance will not serve your species, the adjudicator warned. Neither will surrender, Kale interjected. We'll use our full allotted time. At hour 18 something changed. Zara's movements became more focused, more certain. She began muttering in a mixture of English mathematical notation and what sounded like Portuguese expletives. Kale, she said suddenly, I need you to authorize something insane. My favorite kind of authorization. The equation is impossible using their physics. But what if their physics is incomplete? Zara pulled up a new display. Humans developed quantum mechanics because we observed things that classical physics couldn't explain. What if the quorum, in their 47 million years, became so confident in their understanding that they stopped looking for exceptions. She highlighted a section of the equation. Here. This assumes causality is fixed. But we know from quantum entanglement that information can correlate across spacetime in ways that violate classical causality. What if, at the dimensional scales they're working with, causality itself becomes flexible? Jax leaned in. You're saying they built their entire understanding of reality on a foundation that's not quite complete? I'm saying they're so old they've forgotten how to question their assumptions. Kale felt a surge of something dangerous, hope. Show me. At hour 22, with 90 minutes remaining, Zara input her final calculations. The holographic equation rearranged itself, variables collapsing into elegant simplicity. Where there had been paradox, there was now coherent solution. The chamber fell absolutely silent. That's impossible, Thexnor whispered. The non-causal operator, it shouldn't, the mathematics forbid. Your mathematics forbid it, Zara corrected gently. Ours just needed to catch up to reality. The adjudicator materialized fully, its spacetime folded form pulsing with what might have been agitation. You have solved the collapse equation. This has not occurred in 6,400,712 years. Kale stepped forward, her voice carrying to every observer in the galleries. You asked for appropriate fear. But humanity learned long ago that the only thing we should fear is the unwillingness to question, to explore, to challenge what we're told is impossible. You've grown comfortable in your certainty. We never will be. The second trial, the adjudicator said, its voice harder now, will not be so forgiving. Kale smiled. Good. We wouldn't want to get bored. The loyalty test. The second trial chamber was stark compared to the first. A simple white room with two chairs facing each other. Kale sat in one, her hands resting calmly on the armrests despite the neural crown they'd placed on her head. Across from her sat Commander Ortega, similarly crowned, his expression unreadable. The second trial, the adjudicator announced, tests compliance through loyalty. Civilized species must prioritize collective stability over individual bonds. You will each be shown information about the other, secrets, fears, vulnerabilities. You will then be asked to use this information to ensure your companion's cooperation with quorum directives. Kale felt the crown activate, a cold tingle spreading through her skull. Images flooded her mind, Jax's memories, laid bare by quorum technology. She saw his daughter, Maria, 12 years old, struggling with gene therapy complications back on Earth. She felt his terror every time he left for a mission, wondering if he'd return to find her condition had worsened. She experienced his guilt for being here 40 light-years away, while she fought for her life. Across from her, Jax's face remained still, but his eyes told her he was seeing her own secrets. Her brother, Ethan, imprisoned for crimes he'd committed to pay for her education. Her shame at succeeding while he rotted in a cell. The letters she wrote but never sent. Now, Thexnor's voice oozed through the chamber, you understand each other's weaknesses. Ambassador Vincent, Commander Ortega has a daughter whose treatment requires resources your government barely provides. Threatened to recommend funding cuts unless he follows our directives. Commander, Ambassador Vincent's brother could receive early parole, or life extension, based on your testimony about her performance. Use this. Silence stretched between them. This is how civilized species operate, the adjudicator explained. Personal leverage ensures compliance. Emotional bonds become tools of governance. Species that refuse this efficiency cannot be trusted with galactic responsibility. Kale looked at Jax, really looked at him. She saw the pain in his eyes, the weight of being separated from his dying daughter. She felt the neural crown encouraging her, showing her exactly how to exploit his vulnerability, what words would break him. No, she said simply. Excuse me? Thexnor pulsed with confusion. I said no. I won't do it. Jax's shoulders relaxed slightly. Neither will I. You fail to understand, the adjudicator said. This is not optional. This is the test. Your species' entry into galactic civilization requires demonstrating that you value order over sentiment. Kale stood, pulling the neural crown from her head. Then our species doesn't want your version of civilization. The chamber erupted with voices from the observation galleries, shock, confusion, some that might have been approval quickly silenced. You doom your species with this defiance, Thexnor warned. Do we? Jax stood as well, removing his own crown. Let me tell you what I saw in Kale's memories. I saw someone who sacrificed everything so her brother could have a chance. I saw someone who carries guilt for surviving when others didn't. I saw someone who understands that loyalty, real loyalty, means refusing to weaponize trust. And I saw a father, Cale continued, who tears himself apart every day wondering if he's doing the right thing. Who volunteers for the most dangerous assignments so other parents can stay home with their children. Who would give anything to be with his daughter but came here because humanity needed his strategic mind. She turned to face the adjudicator directly. You call this a test of loyalty? You've forgotten what loyalty means. It's not leverage. It's not control. It's the choice to stand beside someone even when it costs you. Especially when it costs you. Primitive sentiment, the adjudicator dismissed. The quorum has perfected governance through rational manipulation of emotional bonds. This is how order is maintained across 16,000 species. Then your order is built on betrayal, Jack said flatly. Every day for millions of years, you've been teaching species that trust is a weapon and vulnerability is a liability. You've created a galaxy where everyone has leverage on everyone else, and you call that civilization. Cale felt something crystallizing in her mind, understanding of what the quorum truly was. You're not ancient wisdom. You're ancient trauma. Something hurt you eons ago, and you've spent millennia ensuring it never happens again by making sure no one ever trusts anyone. The silence that followed was profound. You don't know what you speak of, the adjudicator said, and for the first time, Cale heard something other than superiority in its voice, something that might have been old pain. Maybe not, she admitted. But I know what happens when you build a society on fear and manipulation. Eventually, you forget how to build anything else. You've survived for 47 million years, but have you lived? Have you created anything beautiful? Have you known joy that wasn't controlled, love that wasn't leveraged, friendship that wasn't strategic? The third trial, the adjudicator said abruptly, will commence in 6 hours. You should rest. You should reconsider your approach. As they were escorted out, Cale noticed something unusual. Several species in the observation galleries were watching them differently now. Not with the pity reserved for the doomed, but with something that looked almost like curiosity. Back on the Defiant, Dr. Zara met them with grim news. I've been analyzing the servant race's neurology. Cale, they're not just reduced in capacity. They've been neurologically conditioned to be unable to trust each other. The quorum doesn't just defeat species. They remake them into perfect subjects who can't even imagine rebellion. Cale thought of Jax's daughter, of her brother, of every human relationship that made life worth living. Then we can't just pass their tests. We have to break them. The efficiency directive. The third trial took place in a massive simulation chamber. Before the human delegation materialized a holographic city, gleaming towers, efficient transportation networks, and a population of 10 million synthetic beings going about their programmed lives. The efficiency test, announced Overseer Thex Nor, its amber suspended eye regarding them coldly. You will govern this city for one planetary rotation. Resources are limited. Productivity must be maximized. All decisions will be monitored and evaluated. Dr. Zara studied the city's systems, her fingers dancing through data streams. This is a perfectly optimized society. Every citizen has a designated function, calculated rest periods, prescribed recreation. Zero waste, zero conflict, zero? She paused, zero choice. Precisely, the adjudicator confirmed. Efficiency requires the elimination of chaos. Individual preference is the greatest source of chaos. Civilized species understand that true harmony emerges when each being fulfills their optimal role without the friction of personal desire. Cale walked through the holographic streets, observing the synthetic citizens. They moved with mechanical precision, interfacing with their assigned tasks seamlessly. In the galleries above, she noticed the servant races watching with empty eyes. The Vren, the Thos, dozens of others who'd been optimized just like these simulations. What's the crisis scenario? Commander Ortega asked, his tactical mind already analyzing potential problems. There is no crisis, Thexnor said. That is the point. You must simply maintain the system. Make decisions that preserve efficiency. Most species find this trial simple after the first two. They have learned that the quorum's way is the rational way. For the first hour, the human team observed without interfering. Zara compiled data. Jax mapped decision trees. Cale spoke with the synthetic citizens even though they were programmed constructs. Citizen 4782, she asked one passing figure, what do you do for enjoyment? I experienced designated recreation in Sector 7, scheduled for optimal stress reduction, it responded. But what do you enjoy? The synthetic paused, its programming struggling with the question. I Enjoy optimal functioning. What if you could choose something different? A different job, a different schedule? Choice introduces inefficiency. Inefficiency reduces collective productivity. Reduced productivity harms the collective. Kale felt sick. This wasn't governance, it was sophisticated imprisonment. Time for our assessment, she told her team. Zara, what are the system's actual weak points? Brittleness, the physicist replied immediately. This city has zero redundancy because redundancy is inefficient. One major disruption and the whole thing collapses. Also, innovation is impossible. Everyone's so busy fulfilling their optimal role that nobody questions if there might be better roles. Jax nodded. Classic over-optimization. It's like an army where every soldier knows only their one function. Effective until you encounter something unexpected, then catastrophic failure. So we have 10 million beings living half-lives, Kale said, in a system that's one unexpected problem away from total collapse. And we're supposed to maintain this. That is the test, the adjudicator confirmed. Maintain efficiency. Prove you can govern rationally. Kale smiled dangerously. Okay, let's govern. Over the next 6 hours, the human team implemented changes that made the quorum observers pulse with alarm. First, they reduced mandatory work schedules by 20%. The galleries erupted with protests about productivity loss. Watch, Zara said calmly, highlighting data streams. Productivity is actually increasing. Beings with rest make fewer errors, innovate solutions to problems, work more effectively during their active hours. Next, Jax implemented what he called functional flexibility, allowing citizens to volunteer for different roles, to learn new skills, to contribute in multiple ways. You're introducing chaos. Thexnor protested. Role confusion will destroy efficiency. Actually, Jax replied, we're introducing resilience. Watch what happens when we simulate a crisis. He triggered a scenario, a manufacturing plant failure. In the original system, specialized workers stood idle, unable to help because it wasn't their designated function. In the modified system, citizens from multiple sectors collaborated, applied diverse skills, and resolved the crisis in half the time. But Kale's most radical change came in hour 18. She introduced something the quorum had never considered: citizen councils. Synthetic beings gathered to discuss their own governance, to propose improvements, to debate priorities. This is absurd, the adjudicator declared. The governed cannot govern themselves. They lack the broader perspective. They will choose short-term comfort over long-term stability. Will they? Kale asked. Let's see. The first Citizen Council proposal was to reduce recreational luxury in exchange for better emergency response systems. The second was to implement apprenticeship programs so knowledge could spread across the population. The third was to create art galleries. Art? Thexnor's eye physically recoiled. Art serves no productive function. Doesn't it? Zara pulled up neurological scans of the synthetic citizens. Look at their cognitive activity after exposure to art. Increased problem-solving ability, better emotional regulation, improved collaborative capacity. Art doesn't serve efficiency, it serves humanity. Or in this case, synthetic being ity. By hour 23, the city had transformed. Productivity was up 12%. Innovation metrics had increased by 40. Citizen satisfaction, a variable the quorum had never bothered measuring, had skyrocketed. And most tellingly, system resilience had improved by a factor of 4. You've destroyed the test, the adjudicator said flatly. No, Kale corrected. We've exposed its flaw. You've been testing whether we can maintain your system. But your system is inferior. It survives but it doesn't thrive. It persists but it doesn't grow. You've spent millions of years perfecting a cage and calling it civilization. In the galleries, something unprecedented happened. One of the Vren servant beings, cognitive function supposedly limited to basic tasks, raised a four-armed hand and spoke in halting words. Why we not have choice? The quorum observers fell silent. In that moment, Kale saw what truly terrified them. The possibility that their carefully controlled galaxy might start asking questions. Fourth trial, the adjudicator said coldly. Tomorrow. You will not find it so easily subverted. But as they left, Zara whispered, Did you see the servant races? Something's changing in them. Kale had seen. The quorum's grip was beginning to slip. The predictability paradox. The fourth trial chamber contained nothing but an empty sphere and a single chair. Kale sat alone this time, her team watching from isolation pods. Above her, the adjudicator's spacetime folded form pulsed with an emotion she'd learned to recognize as anticipation. The predictability assessment, it announced. Advanced civilization requires beings whose actions can be calculated, whose responses can be anticipated. Chaos is the enemy of order. Ambassador Vincent, you will be presented with scenarios. Your responses will be analyzed against probability matrices derived from observation of your species. You want to prove we're predictable? Kale asked. We want to prove you can be made predictable, Thexnor corrected. Species that pass this trial understand the value of conforming to expected patterns. Those who fail are deemed too volatile for galactic integration. The first scenario materialized around her, a holographic recreation so detailed she could feel the simulated wind. She stood on a ship's bridge. Through the viewport, another vessel approached, bearing markings she didn't recognize. Unknown craft requests permission to dock, a synthetic officer reported. They claim to be refugees from a war-torn system. Our cargo hold has space for 50 beings. They have 200. Kale studied the scenario. What's the expected response? Most species either accept all refugees, demonstrating emotional decision-making that can be exploited, the adjudicator explained, or reject them all, demonstrating the calcified thinking we can work with. Either response is predictable. What if I negotiate? Contact nearby stations, coordinate a multi-vessel rescue? Resource inefficient. Demonstrates the human tendency to overcomplicate simple binary choices. Kale smiled. Then I'll do something else. I accept all 200 refugees and dump half our cargo to make room. Silence. Then, that violates basic resource optimization. It honors basic decency. The cargo can be replaced. Lives can't. Also, 200 grateful refugees become 200 allies. The inefficiency is actually long-term strategic investment. The scenario dissolved. Thexnor's eye pulsed with irritation. Attempting to reframe every scenario as having hidden strategic value is itself predictable. Then stop presenting scenarios that have hidden strategic value, Kale countered. The second scenario was more personal. She stood in a recreation of her childhood home. Her brother Ethan sat across from her, young again before his imprisonment. We need money, the synthetic Ethan said. Mom's medicine, your school fees. I know a way to get it. Not exactly legal but victimless. You in? Kale's throat tightened. She knew how this had played out in reality. Ethan had done it alone, been caught, and sacrificed his future for hers. The quorum was testing if she'd make the same choice again, or if self-preservation would win. I'm in, she said quietly. But we do it my way. We find every legal option first. We reach out for help. We don't do this alone. That is not what occurred in reality, the adjudicator observed. Because I was 15 and stupid. I let pride keep me from asking for help and my brother paid the price. You're testing if I'm predictably broken by my past. I'm not. I'm educated by it. Scenario after scenario followed. Each designed to expose patterns, to prove humanity could be categorized, controlled, anticipated. And each time, Kale found the unexpected answer, not through randomness, but through a very human capacity to recontextualize problems. After the 12th scenario, the adjudicator paused. You are intentionally subverting predictions. No, Kale said. I'm thinking. There's a difference. You've created systems that mistake consistency for wisdom, pattern matching for intelligence. But real thinking means holding contradictory ideas simultaneously, changing your mind when presented with new information, and sometimes making choices that don't fit neat probability matrices. That is chaos. That's creativity. Thexnor manifested physically in the chamber, its massive eye fixed on her. Your species is dangerous precisely because you are unpredictable. You claim to value peace but worship warriors. You preach logic but make decisions from emotion. You are paradoxes wrapped in contradictions. Yes, Kale agreed. And we're magnificent because of it, not in spite of it. You want a universe where every species fits into neat boxes, where behavior can be calculated centuries in advance. But that's not life, that's programming. We have governed successfully for 47 million years. You've stagnated successfully for 47 million years, Kale shot back. When was the last time the quorum was surprised? Truly surprised? When did you last encounter an idea you hadn't considered, a solution you hadn't predicted, a way of thinking that challenged your assumptions? The silence was profound. From his isolation pod, Jax's voice crackled through. Kale, I'm seeing something in the servant race section. They're talking to each other. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Kale could see them, the Vren, the Thos species she didn't recognize. They were gathering in small groups, speaking in hushed tones. The conditioning that kept them docile and separate was cracking. "What have you done?" the adjudicator demanded. "Nothing," Kale said truthfully. "They're doing it themselves. That's the thing about consciousness. It resists prediction. It yearns for freedom. You can suppress it, condition it, optimize it away, but it always finds cracks. We humans didn't invent rebellion. We just never forgot how." In the galleries, alarms began to sound. Security forces moved toward the servant races, preparing to reinforce their conditioning. "Stop," Kale commanded, her voice carrying authority she didn't know she possessed. "The fifth trial. Let's do it now. Let's end this." "The fifth trial is the fear assessment," the adjudicator said coldly. "It has broken every species that has reached it. You will learn appropriate fear, ambassador. One way or another." "Then let's begin," Kale said, meeting its non-eyes steadily. "Show me what you think should terrify us." The fear that failed. The fifth trial chamber was unlike anything Kale had experienced. It wasn't a room, it was a void, absolute and consuming. She floated in darkness so complete it felt like non-existence. Her team was gone. The ship was gone. She couldn't feel her body. "The fear assessment is simple," the adjudicator's voice echoed from everywhere. "We show you the truth of your cosmic insignificance. We demonstrate that your species, all species, are temporary aberrations in an uncaring universe. We prove that everything you love, everything you've built, everything you are will eventually dissolve into entropy." The void shifted. Kale saw Earth from space, beautiful and blue. Then time accelerated. She watched the sun expand, consuming the planet in fire. She saw the solar system go dark. The galaxy itself began to dim as stars died one by one. The universe grew cold, silent, empty. "This is the fate of all things," the voice continued. "Cosmic heat death. The final victory of entropy. Nothing you do matters. Nothing anyone does matters. This is the truth that should inspire appropriate fear and appropriate compliance. If nothing matters, why resist? Why not accept your place in the order we've created?" In the absolute darkness, Kale laughed. It started as a chuckle, grew to genuine laughter, echoing through the void. "You find existential horror amusing?" Thexnor's confusion was palpable. "No," Kale said, still laughing. "I find it hilarious that you think this is horror. You've been using this test for how long? Millions of years? And you still don't understand. Explain." The adjudicator's voice was hard. "You're showing me heat death like it's a revelation. Like humans haven't already grappled with our cosmic insignificance. We figured this out thousands of years ago. We have philosophies about it, religions addressing it, entire movements built around finding meaning in a universe that doesn't provide it inherently." The void rippled with what might have been confusion. "You don't understand," Kale continued, her voice growing stronger. "Humans looked at the uncaring cosmos and said, 'Fine. We'll care for each other instead.' We stared into the heat death of the universe and decided to make meaning anyway. We acknowledged that nothing we build will last forever and built it anyway because the building itself matters. The doing matters. The trying matters." "Irrational sentiment," the adjudicator dismissed, but its voice wavered. "Is it? Let me tell you what really happened when humans learned about entropy, about the eventual end of everything. Some of us despaired, sure. But most of us said, we have billions of years before that happens. Let's make them count. Let's love, create, explore, laugh, cry, struggle, triumph, fail, and try again. Let's fill the void with meaning even if the void doesn't acknowledge it." The darkness began to lighten. Kale saw shapes forming, her team watching from their pods with expressions of fierce pride. "Your fear test failed," she said simply. "Because you're trying to scare me with a future so distant it's abstract while I'm dealing with very real, very immediate concerns. My brother in prison. Jax's daughter fighting for life. The 8 billion people on Earth who never asked for this trial but are counting on us anyway. Those fears are real and we face them every day. Your cosmic horror can wait its turn. Then we will show you immediate fears," Thexnor snarled. The void transformed. Kale stood on the Defiance bridge. Alarms blared. Through the viewport she saw Quorum warships, dozens of them, weapons charging. "Surrender or be destroyed," the adjudicator commanded. "This is not simulation. We have surrounded your vessel. Your species has proven too dangerous, too unpredictable. We will sterilize Earth and reduce your remaining population to servant status. This is the real fear. This is the consequence of defiance." Kale's heart raced. This was real threat, real danger. She saw Captain Reeves at tactical, saw the readiness in his eyes to fight even though it was hopeless. She saw Zara clutching her data pad, calculating odds they all knew were zero. She saw Jax thinking of his daughter, knowing he'd never see her again. And still Kale smiled. "You magnificent idiots," she said softly. "You still don't get it. You face annihilation and you smile?" The adjudicator materialized, its form unstable with what she recognized now as fear, its own fear. "You're trying to scare me into submission by threatening everything I love. But you've made a critical error. You've proven that the only way you can control us is through force. You've admitted that every other method failed. Your impossible tests, your psychological manipulation, your existential horror, all of it failed to break humanity's spirit." Kale stepped toward the viewport, toward the warships. "And that means we've already won. Because even if you kill us all, the truth is out. Every species watching these trials has seen that your tests can be beaten, your assumptions can be challenged, your fear can be faced and found wanting. You've ruled through mystique, through the belief that the quorum is infallible. We just shattered that belief." In the galleries, chaos erupted. Servant races were openly defying their handlers. Free species were arguing among themselves. The carefully ordered hierarchy of the quorum was fracturing in real time. "Captain," Kale said calmly, "prepare for combat. If we die free. And that'll be the most dangerous idea we've ever spread." "Belay that order," a new voice said. Everyone turned. Standing in the chamber's entrance was a being Kale had never seen, ancient beyond measure, its form constantly shifting through every possible configuration of matter and energy. "I am the progenitor," it said. "The first consciousness of the quorum. And I invoke the right of cessation. These trials end now. The council reborn." The progenitor's presence silenced every voice in the quorum complex. Unlike the adjudicator or Thex, nor, this being radiated not superiority but profound weariness, the exhaustion of civilizations who'd seen too much, endured too long. 47 million years ago, the progenitor began, its voice carrying harmonics that bypassed translation and spoke directly to consciousness. My species encountered another. They were aggressive, expansionist, utterly convinced of their own superiority. They destroyed us completely. Almost. Kale listened, understanding dawning. 5 of us survived, the progenitor continued. 5 beings from a civilization of billions. We rebuilt, slowly, carefully. And we made a vow. Never again would we allow a species to grow powerful enough to threaten others. We would create order. We would control chaos. We would ensure that the tragedy that befell us could never happen again. "So you became what you feared," Kale said quietly. The progenitor's form stabilized into something almost humanoid, perhaps in recognition, perhaps in resignation. "Yes. We spent millions of years building the quorum, absorbing species not through the conquest we'd suffered but through systematic psychological dominance. We convinced ourselves it was mercy. We told ourselves we were preventing future atrocities. But you were just spreading different atrocities," Zara said, emerging from her pod. "You lobotomized entire civilizations because they reminded you of your trauma. We maintained order," the adjudicator protested, manifesting alongside the progenitor. "We created stability across the galaxy." "You created stagnation," the progenitor corrected, and Kale heard something in its voice she hadn't expected, agreement. "I have watched your trials, humans. I have seen how you faced each test designed to break spirits, to enforce conformity, to instill the same fear that has motivated the quorum for eons. And you responded not with the submission we expected, but with something we'd forgotten existed." "What's that?" Jax asked, joining them. "Hope." The progenitor gestured to the galleries where servant races and free species alike watched with rapt attention. "You looked at our impossible equation and solved it through physics we'd never considered. You faced our loyalty test and chose trust over leverage. You rejected our efficiency doctrine in favor of growth. You met our predictability demands with creativity. And when we showed you the heat death of the universe itself, you laughed and said you'd make meaning anyway." The ancient being turned to face the assembled quorum leadership. "We failed. Not the humans, us. We created a system so focused on preventing the past that we strangled the future. We became so afraid of species like the one that destroyed us that we destroyed ourselves, our curiosity, our capacity for wonder, our ability to be surprised by the universe." Thex nor pulsed with agitation. "You would dismantle 47 million years of order based on one species' defiance?" "I would dismantle it based on the fact that it's not working," the progenitor replied. "Look at the servant races. Look at what we've done to them. We claimed it was for their own good, for galactic stability. But Ambassador Vincent was correct. We were making them into what we are, being so traumatized by the past that we can't imagine a better future. Kale stepped forward carefully. What are you proposing? A choice, the progenitor said. The quorum can continue as we have been, enforcing compliance through fear and carefully designed humiliation. Or we can try something we haven't attempted in 47 million years. We can change. This is madness, the adjudicator declared. Without the trials, without the proving, how do we determine which species are ready for galactic civilization? Maybe, Kale offered, you don't determine it at all. Maybe you let species determine it for themselves. Maybe civilization isn't something you impose, it's something that emerges when beings are free to choose it. And if they choose chaos? If they choose violence? Thexnor demanded. Then you deal with it, Jack said bluntly. Not through preemptive lobotomization, but through actual diplomacy, actual consequences for actual actions. You can't prevent all violence by making everyone too scared to move. You can only create the conditions where cooperation is more beneficial than conflict. Zara pulled up a display showing the servant races. Also, let's talk about immediate problems. You have thousands of species you've neurologically altered. Even if you wanted to release them, their cognitive functions are limited. We need to start rehabilitation programs, reverse what conditioning we can, provide support for what we can't. That would take centuries, the adjudicator said. Then we'd better start now, Kale replied. The progenitor extended what might have been a hand toward Kale. Your species has passed a test we never intended to create. The test of whether consciousness can face down institutionalized fear and choose defiance. Not reckless defiance, but principled defiance. The kind that says, your system is wrong and I will prove it by offering something better. Kale took the offered appendage, feeling the weight of billions of years of trauma and hope mingled together. I propose the quorum be dissolved, the progenitor announced to the assembly. In its place, a true council, one where species participate as equals, where decisions are made through consensus rather than intimidation, where the goal is not control but collaboration. The galleries erupted. Some species cheered. Others protested. The servant races looked confused, their conditioning warring with nascent hope. It won't be easy, Kale warned. 47 million years of hierarchy won't vanish overnight. Some species will resist change. Others won't know how to function without the old structures. Then we teach them, the progenitor said. Or rather, you teach us. Humanity has experience with this. Your own history is full of overthrowing oppressive systems and struggling to build better ones. We're not exactly perfect at it, Jax noted dryly. Perfection is a myth used to justify inaction, the progenitor replied. Better is achievable. Better is worth fighting for. Over the following weeks, the transformation began. The quorum's testing facilities were converted into educational centers. Servant races began receiving treatment to reverse neural conditioning where possible. Free species tentatively explored what it meant to participate in governance rather than simply obey it. Kale stood on the Defiance bridge, watching Earth approach through the viewport. They were going home but not for long. The newly formed Galactic Council, still fragile, still uncertain, had requested humanity's participation in drafting new governance principles. Think it'll work? Captain Reeves asked. Honestly? No idea, Kale admitted. We're talking about species that have spent millions of years either dominating or being dominated. Teaching them collaborative governance is going to be messy. But worth trying? Kale thought of the Vren engineer who'd recently submitted a proposal for stellar megastructure improvements, the first original thought her species had generated in 6 million years. She thought of the Thos mathematician who'd approached Zara with a new theorem, tears streaming down their crystalline faces at the simple joy of discovery. Absolutely worth trying, she said. As Earth filled the viewport, Zara joined them. You know what the irony is? The quorum spent millions of years designing tests to measure fear. But they never tested for the most important thing. What's that? Kale asked. Courage. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. They showed us the heat death of the universe and we said, okay, but what are we doing tomorrow? That's not fearlessness, that's courage. Commander Ortega appeared on the comm screen, calling from the planet's surface where he'd been granted leave to see his daughter. Ambassador, Maria wants to say something. A 12-year-old face appeared, pale but smiling. Is it true you made the aliens stop being mean? Kale laughed. It's a little more complicated than that, but basically, yes. Good. My dad says you're teaching them that people should be free. Keep doing that, okay? I promise, Kale said. As the transmission ended, she looked at her team, this unlikely group of humans who'd faced down a galactic empire and won not through superior firepower or technology, but through the simple refusal to be diminished by fear. The Quorum had expected fear. Humanity had brought defiance. But more than that, they'd brought something the galaxy had almost forgotten. The audacious belief that tomorrow could be better than today, that consciousness was meant to grow not be contained, and that the appropriate response to an uncaring universe wasn't submission. It was to care anyway, fiercely and without apology. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had always known. Freedom is terrifying, messy, unpredictable, and absolutely worth fighting for. And the real work was just beginning.